This video was brought to you by NordVPN. Things aren't going well for the UK at the moment. There's a cost of living crisis, a stagnant economy, and to top it all off, we're now running out of food. Food prices have been rising since the pandemic, and last year there was a major uproar when the UK ran out of eggs, largely thanks to an outbreak of avian flu, which resulted in the death and culling of some 6 million egg-laying hens. But while avian flu might have receded and eggs might have recently returned to supermarket shelves, we've now been hit by a vegetable shortage, forcing certain supermarkets to ration their supplies of tomatoes, cucumbers, peppers, and other salad ingredients. So in this video, we thought we'd do our best to try and figure out why the UK is running out of food at the moment, whether this is going to be a permanent feature of the British shopping experience going forward, and whether it's got anything to do with Brexit. So let's start by taking a look at the shortages themselves. For a variety of reasons, including higher energy prices, bad weather, and labour shortages, the price of certain vegetables in the UK has been steadily rising for the last couple of months. According to ONS data, in the last year, tomatoes are up 22%, cucumbers 38%, cauliflowers 18%, lettuce 30%, and broccoli 24%. As if this wasn't bad enough, in the past few weeks, the UK has suddenly started running out of certain produce, with supermarkets starting to ration their supplies. Tesco, Aldi, Morrisons, and Asda have all introduced rationing on tomatoes, cucumbers, and peppers, and 61% of Brits have noticed shortages at their local shop. Now, things could get worse too, because while the government said they expected the shortages to end before the end of March, a representative for one of the UK's largest farmers' consortiums said that they expected the shortages to last until May, and the National Farmers Union warned that the current shortages could just be the tip of the iceberg. This state of affairs has provoked a pretty furious reaction from the British press. Just last week, the Daily Star ran a front page demanding veg with a man in a tomato suit. And the Metro ran with a story titled "Seize Her Salad" about a woman who was banned from Lidl for trying to buy 100 cucumbers in one go. And the government didn't help things last week when Environment Secretary Therese Coffey suggested that instead of people complaining about the lack of imported vegetables, people should start eating seasonal British vegetables like turnips instead. Downing Street tried to row back on these comments a day later, insisting that they didn't think it was for the government to tell people what to eat. But it wasn't enough to prevent another slew of furious turnip-related front pages. And this story has even been picked up by the foreign press too, who've apparently enjoyed poking fun at the impoverished Brits. India's Economic Times asked why an advanced country like the UK has had to face a problem mostly associated with third world countries and the erstwhile Soviet Union, while the Washington Post went with a classic lettuce pun. But they're right, aren't they? This is a bit odd. So what's going on here? Why has the UK run out of vegetables? Well, there are broadly three reasons: lower imports, lower domestic production, and Brexit. Let's start with lower imports. While the UK probably produces enough food to feed itself, international trade and British dietary preferences mean that the UK still imports about 50% of its food, including about half of its vegetables. Many of the UK's vegetable imports, especially tomatoes and peppers, come from Northern Africa and the Almeria region of Spain. Unfortunately for British shoppers though, the UK has been unable to import as much veg as it usually does for at least three reasons. Firstly, there's bad weather. An excessively warm summer and sub-zero temperatures over winter have reduced crop yields in Spain and Morocco. In fact, Morocco, which accounts for about 25% of the UK's tomatoes, actually had to restrict exports in February to make sure that Moroccans had enough tomatoes themselves ahead of Ramadan, as it's a key ingredient for certain fast-breaking meals. The second issue is higher input prices. As we've detailed in previous videos, fertilizer and energy costs have put financial pressure on farmers. And as such, some farmers have apparently decided that growing certain foods just isn't profitable anymore. For example, farmers in the Netherlands decided that it was too expensive to heat their greenhouses, leading to shortages of aubergines, tomatoes, and cucumbers. Similarly, Belgian farmers apparently decided that they couldn't afford to refrigerate their apples, which meant that they had a far shorter season. Thirdly, there's been a disruption to transport. Much of Europe is still struggling with a lorry driver shortage, and ferry strikes in France and Spain have put further pressure on supply chains. These shortages have also been exacerbated by lower domestic production, though. Fruit production in the UK has dropped by about 16% since last year, and the production of tomatoes, cucumbers, and pears is at its lowest rate since data collection began in 1985. As is the case abroad, a lot of this is down to bad weather and higher energy costs. The UK had a record-breaking heatwave in the summer of last year, and a harsh frost in December. Plus, high energy prices mean that the UK's harvest of crops grown in heated greenhouses, like cucumbers and peppers, are down about 50%. However, and while it might not be the primary cause, these shortages have certainly been made worse by Brexit. Unsurprisingly, the government denies that Brexit has anything to do with it, but the fact that other European countries don't seem to be experiencing similar shortages suggests otherwise. Obviously, Brexit has introduced new frictions into UK-EU trade, but Brexit has also led farmers to struggle with labour shortages here in the UK too. Farmers' unions say that they need somewhere between 70 and 80,000 seasonal workers each year to pick fruit and vegetables in the UK, with many of these people coming from the EU previously. But now, post-Brexit, the government only allocates 40,000 of their visas to this purpose because they're worried about the political impact of high immigration numbers, leading to frankly not enough staff to do the work. According to the National Farmers Union, £60 million worth of food was wasted in the first half of last year alone because of these labour shortages. On top of that, the government hasn't quite decided how it's going to replace the EU's Common Agricultural Policy yet, which previously doled out generous subsidies for certain agricultural practices all across the UK. Now, to be clear, there are a lot of valid criticisms of the EU's Common Agricultural Policy, but the UK government is still yet to come up with anything to replace it, which has left farmers in an uncertain limbo and has deterred them from investing in the necessary infrastructure and equipment to improve their agricultural productivity going forward. All in all, while the primary cause of the UK's food shortage at the moment is crop yield and higher energy prices, as with most issues in the UK, Brexit certainly hasn't helped. And it does explain why we're becoming the butt of salad jokes here in Europe. Hopefully, though, the UK will work out a way of resolving this issue, because with the popularity of Brexit already slipping, it could begin to look increasingly unpalatable if it also leads to people turning up to the supermarkets, unable to even buy the food they want. Speaking of buying things you want and you don't, a couple of years ago, I was a victim of identity theft, and I only found out when a letter from the court came through my door saying that I owed a bunch of money to a broadband company for an address I'd never even lived at. After a bunch of legal back and forth, I was forced to pay the money that I allegedly owed just to try and make the problem go away. But from then on, I was determined to make sure that I wasn't caught out again. And as such, I took a number of steps, including signing up for NordVPN. Now, you surely already know that NordVPN is the world's fastest virtual private network. But you might not know that they have a whole suite of threat protection features too. In fact, NordVPN's threat protection shields you from all kinds of dangerous things online, blocking malware, trackers, and malicious ads to help prevent you from falling victim to any of these scams or phishing attacks. Not only that, they also have a dark web monitoring service. So even if your data were to fall into the wrong hands, they'd scour the dark web to notify you when someone shares, leaks, or sells your details. Hopefully meaning that you'd find out what was going on before a court order lands on your doorstep. Now, ultimately, this isn't a fun thing to think about, but trust me, it's a whole lot less fun when it becomes a reality. Also, it's not just other people that this happens to. I hope you'll agree that I'm a reasonably smart person, and I did a computer science degree, and I still got. So, click the link in the description or go to nordvpn.com/TLDR to get a huge discount on their 2-year plan. And with a 30-day money-back guarantee, you've got nothing to lose. So, thanks for your support, and make sure you click the link in the description.